Everybody wants to be famous, and for a very good reason. Public exposure is one of the most powerful tools you can possibly own and leverage in 2024. Being famous is, especially in 2024, a tool that will make you powerful and will also provide immense value to other people. And this is why. First of all, there's a short-term financial reward of being famous, especially right now. Thanks to automation and globalization, two things I've dedicated a whole chapter of my book to discussing. There's no ceiling on how much money you can make when you have access to the entire world as your market. To put it in perspective, imagine how much money you can make selling a product to everybody that you know. Let's say that product is a rubber ducky. In old school sales teams, they tell you to make a list of every single person that you know, so that's your network. Let's say you spend 3 months traveling and physically knocking on the door of every single person that you know in your network, and you try to sell them a rubber ducky. Imagine one of every 100 people whose doors you knock on decides to buy your rubber ducky. So that's, let's say, $2 each. That's right now how powerful your sales ability is based on how many people you know that you can take time to physically convince to buy your $2 rubber ducky. And the people that buy it might just be doing it out of guilt because they feel bad for you or they don't want to disappoint you because they know you personally. Most people are operating this way. They're knocking on doors, begging for people to give them a job, give them money, buy their product, and do this or that thing for them. And those people that bite may or may not be interested. And overall, it seems like a relationship born out of guilt and desperation. Because let's say one party doesn't want to feel guilty and disappoint the other party, and the other party is completely dependent on their tiny network of peers for survival. And if their tiny network is poor, well, then they're going to be even poorer. In 2024, if you're still operating with this old boomer model, you're dead because you still have to make enough money to keep up with this economy right now, where people right now are using much better and more effective tools for selling and widening their network. So let's say instead that you scrap that old peer-to-peer sales model and instead embraced putting yourself and your brand out there and exposing your rubber ducky to as many people on the internet as possible. So now instead of only the people in your physical network knowing that you're selling a rubber ducky, millions of people on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or Google Ads or whatever know about your rubber ducky. Then, even if your rubber ducky costs only $2, you're still making hundreds of thousands of dollars from your rubber ducky. And the people that are buying your rubber ducky might actually buy it multiple times because unlike the people in your small physical network that you knocked on their door and guilted them into buying your rubber ducky that they really didn't want to buy, but they just sort of felt guilty to buy, the people out there that are buying it are doing it out of their own free will because the algorithm knows that they were looking for a rubber ducky and thanks to you, now they have it. And because of that exposure, you just made somebody's day, not because you forced it out of them, but because your public exposure allowed you to become exposed to the people that really needed what you had to offer, not just the people that were forced to buy what you're selling. So that's essentially what it's like to be famous. You're benefiting people in an honest way if you're selling anything, not because of peer pressure or like you're my friend or my cousin, so now I have to buy this thing from you, but because I actually like your brand, I like your content, whatever you have to sell, and I'm buying it because I actually feel like I need that thing. And here's the cool thing about having a brand or a personality that's famous and gets a lot of public exposure. You can throw any product or idea or event into the mix, put a price tag on it, and people will pay to have access to that thing. In a big world, there will be at least few people that need you. I don't care how ugly or dumb or poor you think you are or boring. Just look at pictures of young Jeff Bezos. So-called ugly, poor, and dumb people that barely speak English are getting what they want. And I promise you that you're not the ugliest, dumbest, or poorest person in the world. There's no rule that says that of all the people that are surviving in the world, only you are so ugly and poor and dumb that you have to shut yourself off from all these blessings that people in your caliber are getting. Another thing that I love about being famous as a tool for long-term wealth and prosperity is that even if you were to change your nationality or lose all of your physical assets and all your money, and let's say a government came after you and taxes you or fines you or forces you to shut down your business and all of your bank accounts, which is a thing that has been happening to a lot of people lately. When you're famous, you can start all over again from scratch with a built-in global market relatively easily. It's not like the old days where the government can shut you down and now you're dead in the water. As long as people know you exist and there's the internet to leverage, you're not physically stuck. You can basically reincarnate your brand in another part of the world under a totally different nationality and start over from a position of power that's already built in. Now, we all know that there can be pros and cons to fame. When you found a way to create value and make money from it, fame can be amazing. You're touching people's lives and whatnot. But for some people, fame is something that they're victimized by. I've been victimized by fame back when I worked in DC politics. Some of you actually know me from when I worked as a writer for Ben Shapiro, Laura Ingraham, and Donald Trump. I had a great relationship with Ben, very positive interactions with Laura, and Donald Trump I never personally interacted with, only people on his campaign. I also worked at various news agencies and PR firms, and I had a lot of famous friends, both in DC and in Hollywood. And my specialty when I worked for news agencies was writing viral content that people would click on. I was great at making content go viral, and honestly, I loved my job and I was a little bit obsessed with it. I was also really good at writing the voices of famous people and sounding exactly like them. And that's how I became a ghostwriter, which was also a very fun skill for me to practice. So for me and a lot of my famous friends at the time, fame was actually a thing that we were victimized by, and this is why. Because none of us were entrepreneurs. No matter how famous we were still full-time wage workers. We weren't generating public exposure for our own rubber ducky. We were generating exposure for somebody else's rubber ducky. We were generating public exposure on behalf of our boss, our organization, whatever political groups or ideologies that we were promoting. And as a result, we became the public punching bag for everybody that hated that boss, that organization, those political groups, but minus making all the money that they made for it. We signed legal non-compete agreements, which only allowed us to sell our boss's rubber ducky and prohibited us from selling anybody else's rubber duckies, including our own. We made peanuts selling one boss's rubber duckies. Imagine knocking on doors every single day for 3 months, trying to sell one person's single rubber ducky to every single person you know. And out of the $2 that those individual people paid for the rubber ducky, you get a teeny fraction of that. But at the same time, you're constantly getting stalked and harassed and threatened over it 24/7. That's what it's like for full-time wage workers in places like DC and Hollywood. Fame is seen as a bad thing in those places, but only because nobody is there selling their own rubber ducky. Nobody's an entrepreneur. They're all wage slaves. Your friends are wage slaves. You're a wage slave. Even the most powerful people that exist in your bubble of colleagues are all wage slaves, no matter how famous they are. And then everybody signs these non-compete agreements. That's a normal thing. I remember my friends and I used to find the addresses of famous people in DC and walk by their homes just so that we can see what their lifestyle's like, so that I can know that when I work my way up, all the way up to the top and become the most powerful, famous person in my field, what my life will be like. And sometimes I would see them coming out of their homes. I know that's a little creepy. Famous people in DC and Northern Virginia, politicians, actors, people on our campaign. I remember observing the way that they lived and got around and thinking to myself, wow, this is so strange. These people seem so big to the public, but when I look at their personal lives, they seem so small. I know total nobodies, anons that are making bank in their sleep and living in mansions in Beverly Hills, while these famous people in DC are making like $30K a year and living like total brokies. How is it that the most famous people on the planet, these famous politicians, actors, and public figures, like how is it that these people are living in tiny rickety shacks in the cheapest parts of town with no butler, no maid, no fancy car, no security from all the people that are trying to kill them and their families, and just living these miserable looking lives? Like here in Latin America, even the slaves are living like kings compared to some of these famous people in DC. And to me, that's when I realized that no matter how famous I become, if I'm a wage slave, if I'm only selling somebody else's single rubber ducky, I can only get so far. When you're an entrepreneur, when you're selling your own rubber ducky, putting yourself on the line for your own rubber ducky or many rubber duckies, and feeling motivated to make the best rubber duckies that the world has ever seen, then fame is only going to make your rubber duckies more profitable. And it will feel so rewarding. Even the hate and the death threats and stalkers will feel so worth it. It'll actually feel like love. It's a sign of how much your rubber ducky meant to all these people that they're willing to take the time to personally write you hate mail or spend the time and resources to come and harass you over it because of how much your rubber ducky impacted them personally. And it's also a sign that people are noticing your rubber ducky. If your rubber ducky is powerful enough that it's generating controversy, then you bet more people are buying from you over somebody else that isn't getting noticed as much. After all, people often hate famous people because they assume that those people are more powerful than they are. And if that fame is actually making you a lot of money and actually garnering power for you, you can use at least some of it to protect yourself. You can hire a couple of bodyguards or whatever, make the hate worth it. But you might say, that still doesn't feel worth it to me, to get hate from people just so that I can be famous. Or maybe you just want to sell a specific thing and you don't want to have to amplify your personal identity just to do that. So to that, I have a few suggestions. First, remember that you don't have to be personally famous to sell things. You can still create a famous brand that is not attached to your personal name and sell things under that brand. The downside might be that you don't have as much control over the brand if somebody else can claim it as theirs, but you can still get the same things done. And the cool thing is that you don't have to be personally liable and get all the hate that people are sending to the brand, because people don't even have to know that it's your brand. You can do it under a separate brand name and hire other famous influencers to help promote the brand. The second suggestion that I'll give you if you're worried about the negative effects of fame in regards to selling things is to try to move to an industry that is slightly less toxic. As a general rule, in this day and age, certain industries have peaked enough that the amount of toxicity that they garner might be more than the amount of money that they're making. So two examples might be American politics and mainstream media. Hollywood might be another example. Some industries are past their prime and they're going to attract more hate than maybe positive value. One industry that I really like and I'm very excited about is the anxiety industry. The anxiety industry was projected to be worth about $6.5 trillion according to a study in 2020, solely based on people's anxiety-based medical expenses. But I've heard people say that especially as automation is replacing a lot of processes, about half of the world's GDP is projected to focus on anxiety-related expenses that are not only medical. So that includes vacations, yoga, therapy, pretty much any physical product that people might spend money on as a result of their anxiety. Maybe you can focus on an original product that nobody's thought of, so that isn't controversial yet. So the bottom line is that you might want to focus on selling in an industry that is still new or growing and hasn't peaked yet. You might still receive hate for that thing, but it won't be as bad as the hate that the average news journalist or Hollywood actor receives. Another suggestion that I'll give to those who want the positive effects of being famous, but minus the negative effects such as all the hate and harassment, is to try to diversify your lifestyle as much as possible. Diversify where you live so that stalkers can't find you so easily. Diversify your online accounts so that if one gets hacked, you have several others to fall back on. Diversify your audience so that even if a few people are pissed off, your entire business doesn't have to collapse. Diversify your businesses. Focus on several industries so that one industry doesn't have to take you down single-handedly. Diversify where you go out to eat, where you spend most of the year, where you go to the gym, who you hang out with, and so forth. Diversify the time that you spend online versus offline. Diversify everything if you're worried about the effects of being famous. This is a pretty good strategy to have in general, not just in regards to fame. When you're diversified, you're protected. When you're protected, you can maximize all the possible benefits without constantly having to worry about the negative effects of being famous. Fame is a social construct, so the negative possible effects of becoming famous will usually come from your unhealthy social experiences from the past. In order to improve the reaction that your public exposure has on you, one solution is to improve your relationship with socializing and improve your social habits. Humans are extremely intelligent creatures, so if you have any kind of insecurity and you're in the public eye, people will sense that as long as you're getting any kind of exposure. If it benefits them because either they're your competition or they feel insecure and they want to bring you down to their level, they're going to pick at it. So just remember that not everybody that picks on you and tries to bring you down actually has the power to do so. Oftentimes, they might just be a young college kid that feels insecure and gross about themselves and might be even teetering on suicide. And the only thing keeping them alive is knowing that a famous person like you can feel just as bad as they feel. They want to feel that you're on their level and they're not alone. And sometimes famous people, for that reason, become punching bags for such people. I would know because when I was in college and feeling really insecure and badly about myself, I used to create accounts with anonymous pictures and I used to troll famous people because it felt so satisfying to see them react with the same rage and anger that I felt inside of me. And by the way, I used to do that because it was so easy to do it. Famous people are just humans. To the public, as a famous person, you're a piñata. The bigger you are, the more exciting it is for insecure people that feel in pain to whack you. And if you're not prepared, if you don't have the right support system behind you, you're going to feel hurt. I can't tell you how many times I've seen newly famous people who don't completely grasp this yet, getting completely trampled on by the public and making themselves as small as possible, and sometimes even deleting their accounts or shutting down their business even because they didn't realize that the hate that they were getting wasn't really about them. It was about somebody else trying to scratch their emotional itch. and they were simply famous or successful enough to be in the line of fire. People that we often see as famous or successful oftentimes don't see themselves that way, even if they pretend to. And that's why when people troll a so-called famous or successful person, thinking that they're bringing them down from their high horse, really what might be happening is that they're just kicking a normal everyday person. If you're going to put yourself out there, you need to understand that no matter how low that you think you are, other people are going to put you on a pedestal and possibly try to take you down from what they see as your high horse, even if you don't see yourself as being in a high horse. And to protect yourself, you need to show the insecure humans out there that they can't bring you down to their level. And the way that you'll accomplish that is by growing a strong sense of self and becoming as strong as you possibly can be inside of yourself. Don't let anybody shake you. Don't respond to the trolls. Don't feed the trolls. And remember that there's always going to be toxic people out there. Your job as a famous person that's selling or promoting any kind of value in the world is to bring other people up to your level, not let them take you down to their level. This will be very easy for you to accomplish when you're surrounded by a strong support system of people that understand what you're trying to accomplish and also aren't new to fame and success. People that are new to fame and success will easily cave to this, and they might even pressure you to do it too. They might see one negative comment on your socials and urge you to shut down your entire business over it. They'll see one tiny failure and try to push you to shut up and become as small as possible over it. You need to step away from these people for a while, or at the very least tell them to sit down and shut up for a very long time. I don't care if they're your friends or family or what kind of gold these people are made of. You need to spend this very crucial building phase of your life around people that are stronger than you, that are very familiar with fame and success, and that will keep cheering you on all the way to the finish line, no matter how many obstacles are going to come your way, because there will be a ton of obstacles. There's going to be trolls and there's going to be hate and a lot of ups and downs, and you're going to need to keep going if you want to survive, let alone thrive. So we talked about how to not lose your mind while being famous, but we didn't discuss how to actually become famous. Well, that's the easiest part. The way that you'll become famous is by being an outlier. Be willing and able to be the person that nobody else is willing to be. Say what nobody else is willing or able to say. Do what nobody else is willing to do. Invest in what nobody else is willing to invest in. Sometimes that means being in the right place at the right time, or hopping on a trending topic on social media before it's trending, or learning a skill that nobody else is capable of or cares about. This might sound like a lot of work, but sometimes it just takes a little bit of getting to know you and what makes you different and unique from other people, and then finding out how to leverage it in the public. It also sometimes involves a little bit of traveling and learning about the world. After all, if you want to know what makes you different from the world at large, you might benefit from becoming exposed to it. And once you learn how to do that, I'd highly encourage the use of either paying somebody on Fiverr or paying for social media ads directly to boost you to a greater audience. I've been very recently experimenting with ads for my own brand. I'm really curious to see how targeted ads fare compared to SEO or organic social views for my own stuff. And obviously, I'll try to share whatever results I get with you guys. So thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you're new to my channel, I've written a book called House Hackers Anonymous. It's a 12-step survival program for my younger self, with the goal of taking my younger self from literally zero to financial freedom, no matter what obstacles she's facing in life. So I hope that that process will help you as much as it helps me. And if you haven't already, feel free to subscribe to my channel, because I'm always posting stuff on here and I love doing it. See you in the next video.